in a world more interconnected than ever before. The International Center for Protocol and Diplomacy stands as a beacon of leadership, connection, and transformation. We are the leading independent platform working globally, committed to making protocol and diplomatic practices more effective. We empower global visibility, foster connectivity, and inspire influence, all for the advancement of our vital profession. Our commitment is to visibility, integrity, value, and performance. We educate, influence, and transform. Our mission: to build global leaders who make significant differences within the global diplomatic community and diversified industries. With the Sustainable Development Goals 2030 agenda at our core, we facilitate connectivity, provide viable opportunities, and bridge the gaps between individuals, governments, embassies, international organizations, international business communities, and more. We navigate the complex landscapes of diplomacy, trade, economics, foreign policies, and culture. We help organizations understand the strategic engagements of diplomatic empowerment, ensuring a world that is truly connected. International Center for Protocol and Diplomacy, empowering global connectivity and sustainable leadership for a brighter tomorrow.
Hello everyone, so we're live and at the moment we have people joining us. We're able to see the number of people who are seeing us here. Just before we go on, I just wanted to give us some rules of engagement. So for everyone who's watching us live, there's the comment section that we can use to leave our messages in real time. And we could also use the comment box or the message box if you're streaming via StreamYard to leave your notes, comments, and questions for all the moderators and speakers as we go on. Thank you so much.
In the world of politics and diplomacy, you represent the utmost philosophy, treating all parties with respect and equality. Regions, traditions, nations, and missions, you are the key to peaceful interactions. You are the platform that holds assemblies, congregations, and talks, or meetings at high-level events where a head of delegation presents and resolves international matters, proving that protocol indeed matters. Providing guidelines on cultural signs and also the courtesy rule that applies. As you prepare with flawless excellence, agenda seating and order of precedence, reflecting that protocol standing still for all who are involved, VIP, guests, dignitaries, delegations, and audience, creating a better place, a connected universe. In the world of sports and military, you guarantee professional immunity, free from faux pas, free from mistakes. Be prepared and have what it takes. Flags, anthems at victory ceremonies, juggling around with medals and trophies, ranks, uniforms, parades, and gifts, solving unforeseen issues with polished wits. Although the envious many and the ignorant brigade may think it's but vanity and needless charade, as they are not aware of the facts, what this profession expects: night shifts, long hours on weekends, working at galas and dining events. In the world of business, trade, and science, you balance between known and unconscious bias, ensuring peace, harmony, and alliance of all team members in reliance, working for the success of the official ties, connecting people and ideas in their minds. They share at a conference or a symposium. Attention to detail is the minimum. Requirement of a profession: be ready, be exceptional. In the world of digitalization, you bridge tradition and innovation, using new set of skills and adaptability to the future encounters and integrity. Switching personal conventions and resolutions into online platforms with viable solutions. GDPR, Wi-Fi, and internet connection just as vital as dress codes and invitations. In the world of the 21st century, where protocol means efficiency, acting like an ATM, paying off with courtesy, you represent trust, the most valuable currency. At any given official or social occasion, your polite manners with seamless organization make leaders succeed regardless of the nation, race, color, age, or even gender and culture. Protocol respects all parties in a phenomenal structure. You sacrifice the time, distant from family. You dedicate your life to enhance diplomacy.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. On behalf of the ICPD, the International Center for Protocol and Diplomacy, we give you a warm welcome, and I would like to introduce you to my colleague, Ms. M. Bartels, who is the ICPD Africa lead, overseeing its business, mainly in West Africa. She's a certified communications expert, a protocol and ethical executive, and the founder and the executive director of GPA Awards International Ltd, which is a professional development organization that supports executives through creativity, innovation, and excellence. She's also the founder of Excel Consulting GH, a personal branding expert and executive coach with a track record of building incredible personal brands that helps executives to stand out, become visible, and attract a passionate tribe through communication and etiquette. An influential and ardent public speaker, Ms. Bartels also supports and coaches one-on-one C-suite executives, senior government officials, media houses, banks, institutions, and parastatals. Ms. M. Bartels is going to introduce our moderators, our host, and the following speakers. So, M, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Agnes. Thank you. I really appreciate this. I would like to introduce our director, the International Center for Protocol and Diplomacy Director, Honorable Patricia Kenneth Devine. Patricia Kenneth Devine is the director of the International Center for Protocol and Diplomacy, where she leads strategic engagements to promote protocol and diplomacy globally. She has recorded phenomenal success and achievements working with global brands around the world, professional bodies, institutions to initiate the change campaign in the protocol and diplomatic communities. Her previous engagement at the Department of International Trade and as an international trade advisor for the energy and sustainability sectors in West Africa have also accelerated her performance in promoting and developing new strategic business. She's led various programs driving global strategic initiatives in protocol and diplomacy, promoting sustainable transformation agenda for youth and women. I'd also like to introduce my co-moderators here. Agnes, who just spoke, is the lead advisor and head of projects on sustainable development at the International Center for Protocol and Diplomacy, based in Hungary. She also specializes in executive diplomatic leadership and the management of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. She's organized and presented at several on-site and online multilingual events on international scientific collaboration, corporate governance, and sustainable development diplomacy in emerging markets for over 2 decades. She's also helped in enhancing intercultural awareness and soft diplomacy skills as the core foundations of collaborative and thriving multipolar world. She's also provided tools for well-informed and invested citizenship, promoting shared responsibility and accountability within the new diplomacy. Her vision is to uphold human dignity and promote harmonious coexistence. I'd also like to introduce my co-moderator, Mr. Apollo John, who's a seasoned protocol and etiquette expert with over a decade of experience. He's the CEO of Protocol Hub International and also serves as Director for East Africa at the International Center for Protocol and Diplomacy, where he oversees ICPD's coordination across the East Africa region. He's formerly served as the Director of Protocol at the Lake Region Economic Bloc, and prior to this was the Chief of Protocol and Chief of Staff in the Office of the Governor, Homa Bay Country. A lawyer by training, Mr. John holds a Bachelor of Laws degree from Nkumba University, Uganda. He's undertaken advanced professional training, including an executive diploma in protocol and diplomacy from the International School of Protocol and Diplomacy, Brussels, specializing in Africa, China, and diplomatic trade from the Jiangxi College of Foreign Studies, China, and the Senior Management course at Kenya School of Government. He's also trained at the Protocol School of Washington. He's the member of the Protocol and Diplomacy International Protocol Officers Association in PDIPOA. I'd like to also ask Honorable Patricia Kenneth Devine to come on stage and provide a few words in introduction.
Distinguished ambassadors present here today, esteemed delegates, our esteemed speakers, protocol officers, scholars, and guests, I welcome you all to this great conference. It is with immense pleasure and profound privilege that I welcome you to the East-North Africa Protocol and Diplomatic Leadership Online Conference, which is themed The Role of Protocol and Diplomacy in Regional Integration in East and North Africa. Today, we unite across borders, time zones, and culture in a shared commitment to harnessing the transformative power of diplomacy and protocol to foster unity, collaboration, and sustainable progress in our dynamic regions. East and North Africa stand at the crossroad of opportunity and challenges. Our regions are a vibrant tapestry of ancient civilizations, diverse culture, and boundless potential. From the bustling markets of Nairobi to the historic corridors of Cairo, from the innovation hubs of Addis Ababa to the cultural crossroads of Tunis, we are bound by a shared aspiration for a future defined by prosperity, peace, and partnerships. Yet we also face complex realities, economic disparities, geopolitical tensions, climate challenge, and the urgent need for inclusive development. It is in this context that diplomacy and protocol emerge not merely as tools of engagement, but as a vital instrument for shaping a cohesive and resilient regional future. The theme of this conference, the role of protocol and diplomacy in regional integration, is both timely and critical. Diplomacy is the art of building bridges where walls once stood, and protocol is the framework that ensures those bridges are built on mutual respect, dignity, and precision. Together, they enable us to navigate the complexities of our interconnected world, fostering trust and collaboration among nations. Over the course of this conference, we will be exploring rich arrays of topics that lie at the heart of regional integration. From economic diplomacy, how can we leverage diplomatic strategies to drive inclusive economic growth, attract investments, and create opportunities that uplift communities across the Northeast Africa by aligning our economic priorities through dialogue? We can unlock the potential of our markets and position our regions as global economic powerhouses. We will also look at the role of protocol in diplomacy. Protocol is often described as a choreography of diplomacy. It ensures that every interaction, from state visits to multilateral summits, reflects respect and fosters goodwill. Harnessing soft power, which is also an area to be discussed, our regions are endowed with unparalleled cultural wealth. Our music, literature, art, and traditions are powerful tools for influence. And then we look at regional cooperation. No nation thrives in isolation. From the African Union to the Arab League, regional cooperation is the bedrock of integration. We will explore how collaborative frameworks can address shared challenges, from security to infrastructure, and amplify our collective voice on the global stage. And then we will look closely at regional trade agreements. This is the lifeblood economic integration. Agreements like the African Continental Free Trade Area hold immense promise for boosting intra-regional trade and economic resilience. Our discussions will focus on how diplomacy can ensure that agreements translate into tangible benefits of our people. And most interestingly, we will also look at cultural intelligence in diplomacy. In a region as diverse as our, cultural intelligence is not optional. It is essential. Understanding the nuances of our culture, histories, and values enables diplomats to build deeper, more meaningful connections. So these topics are not just academic, they are building blocks of a vision of East and North Africa that is united, prosperous, and forward-looking. Diplomacy and protocol provide the framework for turning the vision into reality. These are the language of collaboration, the tools of trust building, and the foundation for sustainable partnerships. By blending tradition with innovation and cultural sensitivity with strategic foresight, we can create a future where integration drives economic growth, social progress, and regional stability. As we gather today, I am reminded of the words of late Kofi Annan, who said, "We may have different religions, different languages, different color skin, but we all belong to one human race. In East and North Africa, our diversity is our strength." Through diplomacy, we celebrate this diversity while forging a shared path forward. Through protocol, we ensure that every step in the path is taken with respect, dignity, and purpose. This conference is an opportunity to share knowledge, exchange ideas, and inspire one another. To our distinguished speakers, thank you for lending your expertise to these critical discussions. to our delegates, your presence, whether you are a diplomat, policymaker, a scholar, a practitioner, enriches this platform. I encourage you to engage actively, challenge assumptions, and contribute to a dialogue that will shape the future of our regions. As we embark on this journey of reflection and collaboration, let us commit to building an East and North Africa that is also only integrated, also inclusive. I hereby open this conference and I wish everyone a beautiful time as we proceed. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Would like to get John Apollo or Polo John on to introduce our next speaker, please.
Thank you so much to our distinguished speakers, ambassadors present. Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
We can hear you.
Yes, you can
Thank
go
you so
ahead
much.
reading.
I don't know what has happened, and I'll be back shortly. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to take this moment to introduce Ambassador Kim Salim Walusimbi. Ambassador Walusimbi is a delegate of the African Union and currently serving as an independent Continental Youth Advisory Council. He is based in Uganda. He's also a lead policy researcher and analyst, trade advisor, and football administrator. He is skilled in the field of research, product development, and marketing. He's also talent management. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome Ambassador Kim Salim Walusimbi. Thank you.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, protocol observed, distinguished guests, esteemed colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor to address you today at the inaugural East and North Africa Protocol and Diplomatic Leadership Conference. I'm happy to share about regional trade agreements and how they impact the East and North Africa, with a particular focus on the African Free Continental Trade Area, which we normally abbreviate as the AfCFTA. Ladies and gentlemen, the current regional trade agreement that we are looking at is the AfCFTA, and we look at it as a powerful instrument for economic integration, cooperation, and development. Why do we look at the regional trade agreement as one of the key instruments that can foster regional integration through diplomacy?
It seems we've lost Ambassador Kim.
Yeah, we're trying to fix that.
In the meantime, I would recommend going ahead with the Ambassador Saroja's video, if that is available, please.
Yes. All right. We'll go ahead with that now.
Thank you.
Distinguished panelists and participants, good afternoon. I'm pleased to speak on a subject that stands at the intersection of policy, economics, and human aspiration: the role of economic diplomacy in advancing development and regional integration in North and East Africa. In a world increasingly shaped by interdependence, economic diplomacy is no longer a secondary tool of foreign policy. It is a central lever, a means of transforming the promise of markets into the lived reality of sustainable growth, job creation, and political stability. Economic diplomacy strategic use of a country's political and diplomatic assets to achieve economic goals both domestically and internationally. It merges negotiation, policy influence, and strategic partnerships to expand trade and investment flows, secure access to resources and technologies, resolve economic disputes, promote a country's comparative advantages. In the African context, it becomes developmental diplomacy, grounded in the belief that economic progress is the foundation for peace and social cohesion. North and East Africa's strategic position. North Africa, proximity to Europe via the Mediterranean, creating a natural trade corridor, membership in trade blocs like the African Continental Free Trade Area and the Euro-Mediterranean Partnership Agreements. Economies like Egypt and Morocco serving as manufacturing and logistics hubs. East Africa, rapid GDP growth over the past decade in countries such as Ethiopia, Kenya, and Rwanda. The East African Economic Community as a driver of integration and harmonized policies. Strategic ports like Mombasa, Djibouti, and Berbera as gateways for intra-African and global trade. Why does economic diplomacy matter for development? It supports the development in following ways: mobilizing investment, attracting FDIs into priority sectors such as renewable energy, agribusiness, and infrastructure, and also digital services. Trade facilitation, negotiating better access to markets through tariffs, regulatory alignment, and logistical improvements. The transfer of technology, leveraging partnerships for skills, innovation, and research capacity. Resilience building, diversifying markets and reducing dependency on a narrow set of commodities or partners. For example, targeted economic missions from Kenya to Asia have opened doors for high-value tea and horticultural exports, while Morocco's renewable energy diplomacy has positioned itself as a leader in solar and wind power in Africa. Regional integration as a force multiplier. Economic diplomacy is most effective when aligned with regional integration. The African Continental Free Trade Area. By removing intra-African tariffs, the grouping creates a unified market of 1.4 billion people. Infrastructure corridors like the Lapsed corridor linking Kenya, Ethiopia, and South Sudan, boosting connectivity. The harmonization of regulatory mechanism. The African community's external tariff corridor is a crossroads of reducing transactional costs and uncertainty. North and East Africa, bridging the Mediterranean and sub-Saharan region, can play a unique role in knitting together African value chains and supply routes. Challenges and response in the geopolitical complexity. Border disputes, political transaction, and security risks can disrupt economic cooperation. Here, quiet diplomacy, conflict-sensitive trade policies are essential. Bridging infrastructure gaps. Ports, roads, and digital networks require massive capital and coordinated funding approaches such as blended finance from multilateral, regional, and private sources. The Horn of Africa's recurring droughts remind us that economic diplomacy must integrate climate resilience and green finance. Global trade tensions, Africa's negotiations must defend its interest in a world of shifting supply chains, ensuring that new trade agreements deliver tangible economic gains. Strategic recommendations: strengthen African negotiating capacity, invest in training trade negotiators and economic diplomats, build shared African negotiating positions to improve leverages. Leverage diaspora networks, harnessing the skills, capital, and advocacy of African diaspora in Europe, the Middle East, and North America. Promote regional value chains, link agricultural producers in the East African region to processing factories in the North Africa and vice versa. Digitizing trade, adopting e-customs platforms, blockchain-based logistics, tracking to reduce corruption and delays. Green and Blue Economy Cooperation, partnered on renewable energy and sustainable fisheries, ensuring that climate action and economic growth advance together. Economic diplomacy is not an abstract theory. It's a hands-on tool for building prosperity that endures. By linking national ambition to regional solidarity, North and East Africa can amplify their voice globally, transform opportunity into inclusive development, and secure a future defined by resilience and innovation. In summary, I'd like to just highlight a couple of points. The definition of economic diplomacy, the strategic use of diplomacy to achieve economic growth, attract investments, expand trade, and foster innovation. In North Africa, the gateway to Europe, manufacturing hubs, and East Africa, high growth rates, strategic ports. The development impact mobilizes investment, boosts trade, transfers technology, builds resilience. Regional integration and infrastructure corridors, common tariffs, harmonized regulations. And the challenges: geopolitical tensions, infrastructure gaps, climate risks, global trade rifts, and strategic actions. What can we do to overcome these challenges? Trade negotiators, mobilize diaspora, build value chains, digitize trade, and advance the green economy. I'll leave you with a couple of examples, Africa-focused examples and case studies of economic diplomacy. Kenya's economic diplomacy for FDI. Kenya has actively used bilateral and multilateral trade engagement to attract foreign direct investments, focusing on infrastructure, ICT, and renewable energy. This includes targeted investment forums, trade missions, and policy reforms to improve business climate. This shows a coordinated diplomatic and policy approach that can channel investments into priority sectors. Morocco's renewable energy partnerships. Through agreements with the European Union, the Gulf states, Morocco has positioned itself as a solar and wind energy hub, notably via the Noor Uzaret solar complex. Demonstrates how sector-specific diplomacy can secure technology transfer, finance, and market access. Ethiopia-Djibouti infrastructure corridor. Joint investments and diplomatic coordination has created a modern rail link and port upgrades, reducing transport costs and boosting trade. If you look at global comparative cases of economic diplomacy, I'd like to highlight Vietnam's access to the WTO in 2007. Years of negotiation and domestic reform allowed Vietnam to join the WTO, unlocking export growth and investment flows. It illustrates how multilateral economic diplomacy can catalyze structural reform. The EU-South Korea Free Trade Agreement, a comprehensive FTA that removed tariffs, aligned standards, and boosted bilateral trade significantly. It shows the power of regulatory diplomacy in expanding market access. China's Belt and Road Initiative, combines infrastructure, finance, trade agreements, and political engagement to deepen economic ties across Asia, Africa, and Europe. And key takeaways across cases for me would be the alignment of domestic policy, external negotiation, and reforms at home to strengthen credibility overseas, sector targeting, for example, energy, infrastructure, ICT, allows focused high-impact diplomacy. Regional integration mechanisms amplify national efforts by creating larger and more attractive markets. Long-term relationship building with partners often matter more than short-term deals. I think I've left you with some food for thought. Economic diplomacy is indeed a topic that is relevant in the 21st century. Thank you. I wish you all a successful conference.
Thank you very much. I would like to recognize Ambassador Saroja Sirisena for her excellent intervention. She's the director at Quest Consulting, Strategic Advisory for Business and International Relations. She's an accomplished career diplomat whose 26-year journey is marked by her strategic powers and leadership in the realm of international relations. Her tenure as Sri Lanka's High Commissioner to the United Kingdom from March 2020 to November 2023 was a testament to her commitment to enhancing Sri Lanka's global presence, which was recognized when she was awarded the title of the Diplomat of the Year from Asia and Oceania by the Diplomat magazine in 2023. Her strategic insights were further demonstrated in her role as the Director General for External Relations in the Ministry of Economic Development, where she skillfully managed foreign assistance in the post-conflict reconstruction phase. In her international service, Saroja held roles as the Minister at the Permanent Mission of Sri Lanka to the United Nations Office in Geneva and Deputy Chief of the Sri Lanka Embassy in Brussels and Mission to the EU. Now I would like to hand over, please, to see if Ambassador Kim is back online, please, to conclude his presentation. Thank you.
Okay, so I think Ambassador Kim may still be having some technical issues, so we may need
I see the message. Okay, so then I would like to hand over to the next speaker, please, who is going to be introduced by our colleague John. He's going to introduce Ambassador Lazarus O. Amayo. Please, the floor is yours, John. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Ambassador Lazarus Amayo. Ambassador Lazarus Amayo is currently the Special Envoy for African Union Champion for Institutional Reforms, appointed by President William Ruto in May 2024 to enable him drive institutional reforms in the African Union in partnership with the Kenya Ministry of Foreign and Diaspora Affairs and African Union. Prior to this, Ambassador Lazarus Amayo served as a Member of Parliament for Karachuonyo constituency and also a Minister for Trade. Was a former High Commissioner to India with concurrent credentials to Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and Singapore in 1999 to 2004. Acting Permanent Secretary, Minister of Foreign Affairs, 2004-2006. Also held roles as Director of Administration and Head of International Organization and Conference, Multilateral Relations in 2004 and 2006. High Commissioner to Zambia and Malawi and Permanent Representative to COMESA in 2006-2010. Ambassador Lazarus Amayo was Director, Europe and Commonwealth Division, Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Trade. High Commissioner to the United Kingdom and concurrently Permanent Representative to the International Maritime Organization, IMO, and the Commonwealth in 2014-18. Ambassador and Permanent Representative to the United Nations in New York 2018 and 2020, and Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary of Kenya to the United States. Someone phone.
Sorry about that. Yeah, but I think you can go on.
I was just concluding. He's a former ambassador and permanent representative to the United Nations in New York 2018-2010, Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary of Kenya to the United States, formally presenting his credentials in July 2020. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Ambassador Lazarus Amayo. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Apollo, for the long introduction, which would be befitting somebody looking for a job, but I'm not in that category. Distinguished organizers, colleagues in diplomacy and protocol, esteemed speakers, ladies and gentlemen, I'm happy to join you today for this important conference organized by the International Center for Protocol and Diplomacy in collaboration with Protocol Hub International and other partners. Let me also take this opportunity to thank the organizers for their foresight in convening this timely dialogue on a well-thought theme, the role of protocol and diplomacy in regional integration, with particular reference to Eastern and Northern Africa. Let me also thank Mr. John Apollo, who extended the invitation to me to participate in this online conference. Ladies and gentlemen, the African continent is at a defining moment. The formation of the AU signaled an intensified commitment to regional collaboration, laying the foundation for comprehensive integration initiatives. The AU plays an important role in shaping regional policies, employing various mechanisms to articulate and implement its vision. The African Union and its regional economic communities are beneficiaries of both diplomatic protocol and diplomacy. They have fully used protocol and diplomacy to create an atmosphere that has enabled the Union and the 8 regional economic communities to come up with frameworks, agreements, and protocols for advancing regional integration under the umbrella of African Union Agenda 2063 and related flagship projects and instruments. The African Union Agenda 2063, ladies and gentlemen, is a strategic framework for Africa's development and regional integration, aiming to transform the continent into a globally competitive force. It envisions an integrated, prosperous, and peaceful Africa driven by its citizens. Agenda 2063 emphasizes both the political and economic integration, with a strong focus on regional economic communities as key drivers. The key aspects of the AU Agenda 2063 on regional integration include the Continental Free Trade Area, which aims to create a single market for goods and services across Africa, boosting inter-African trade as a priority. It also delves into matters on infrastructure development, like looking for and creation of high-speed railway networks and energy to enhance connectivity and facilitate trade and investment across the continent. The other important aspect under Agenda 2063 is free movement of people, a key component of integration. Agenda 2063 supports free movement of people, including rights of residence and establishment, to foster closer ties and economic activity. Last in that area is strengthening regional economic communities, which AU recognizes as playing critical role in driving regional integration. The African Union therefore recognizes 8 regional economic communities, namely the Arab Maghreb Union, UMA, Common Market for Eastern and Southern Africa, COMESA, the CENSAD, the ECAS, the ECOWAS, the IGAD, and the Southern African Development Community. Regional economic integration aims to create larger, more attractive markets, link landlocked countries to international markets, and support inter-African trade. Let me take a few minutes to highlight a few issues on East Africa and Northern Africa based on the reference that I was given. In Eastern Africa, of course, we have the East African Community, the IGAD, and COMESA operating because of multiple membership. But let me say that the East African Community is a regional intergovernmental organization of 8 partner states, namely Burundi, DRC Congo, Kenya, Rwanda, Somalia, South Sudan, Uganda, and Tanzania, with a population of 331 million people and having a land area of 5.4 million square kilometers. EAC is one of the fastest growing regional economic blocs in the world and is widening and deepening cooperation among partner states in various key spheres. And in this regard, because of time, let me just briefly mention about the 4 pillars of integration under East African Community and status of implementation. The 4 are, of course, establishment of the customs union, the common market, monetary union, and political federation. We're happy to note with appreciation that East African Community has in place a functional or operational customs union. It has in place operational and functional common market protocol. It has also work in progress on the East African Monetary Union. You'd recall that in 2015, the EAC Summit approved and signed the protocol for establishment of an East African Monetary Union and directed the ministers to work on it, given a 10-year framework. Last but not least, the pillar of political federation. That is the ultimate desire. But in 2017, the East African heads of state and government adopted a political confederation as a transition model to the ultimate desire of having a political federation for Eastern Africa. Time may not allow me to go into details, but let me briefly also mention for the North, we have the Arab Maghreb Union integration. The Arab Maghreb Union, established in 1989, aimed to foster regional integration among its 5 member states of Algeria, Libya, Mauritania, Morocco, Tunisia. However, despite the initial goals of economic unity and cooperation, AMU has some challenges and may miss some of its earlier targets, but the potential is high, and particularly on the key objectives on economic integration, political cooperation, cultural exchange, as well as peace and security. It is common knowledge, and many believe that AMU has great potential for future integration. And as I said, many believe that diplomacy can help unlock the great potential that is in AMU. But back to protocol and diplomacy. Diplomatic protocol serves as a crucial tool in foreign policy by establishing and maintaining respectful and efficient communication between nations. It provides a framework of rules, procedures, and traditions that govern or guide interactions, ensuring smooth and orderly conduct of international relations. This is by fostering trust, understanding, and a sense of order. Protocol helps to facilitate cooperation, manage conflicts, and enhance a nation's influence on the global stage. Diplomatic protocol functions as a tool of foreign policy. It facilitates structured interactions between diplomats, clear communications, ensures respectful communication, and minimizes potential for misunderstandings that can lead to conflicts. That vital role by protocol calls for the need for training and professionalism, and that is why I commend the organizers for promoting this aspect, because training and professionalism are important as they sharpen the skill and qualities required for the job. Some of the qualities that diplomats, particularly on protocol or practitioners of protocol, would be expected to have are strong communication skills, both verbal and written, are essentially interacting with individuals or groups. Organizational skills are also necessary, are actually very necessary for diplomats, particularly those on protocol. The ability to plan, organize, and manage tasks is something that is important, and the training would be able to help shape in that. And attention to detail. Protocol officers need to be meticulous and detail-oriented to ensure that all aspects of events that they're participating in are handled correctly. Another important area where training can also help is diplomacy and cultural sensitivities. It is important that practitioners understand and respect cultural differences and diplomatic norms, for that is vital for effective protocol management. Then, of course, as usual, challenges exist, and so problem-solving skills, ability to anticipate and resolve issues are equally important, not forgetting, of course, punctuality among the practitioners. Time does not allow me to go into details, but you'd appreciate that in any diplomatic missions and in ministries of foreign affairs, the protocol department has a number of functions which are important for operations. And we say that protocol department is primarily responsible for managing practical aspects of diplomatic relations and ensuring smooth functions of international interactions. Remember that these services are provided within the premise of advancing foreign policy objectives of each country. Among them are coordination of state and official visits, administration of diplomatic privileges and immunities granted to diplomats, coordination of presentation of credentials by ambassadors and high commissioner designates, coordination and presentation of letters of appointment of heads of international and regional organizations, management of diplomatic presidents, records and documentation, organization of events, including diplomatic briefings, logistical management, like transport, accommodation, security, liaison with diplomatic corps, and serving as a focal point of contact and advice to the home ministries on matters of protocol. The list is longer. That is why, as I said earlier, that we commend the organizers for promoting this agenda so that we can have diplomats and protocol practitioners that are well versed with the issues to carry it to the next level. Last but not least is a brief comment on diplomacy, which, as I said earlier, is a tool of foreign policy and serves as a tool in a nation's foreign policy, enabling communication, negotiations, and relation building with other countries. Diplomacy involves various activities like dialogue, negotiation, representation, conflict resolution, all aimed at advancing a country's national interest and achieving its foreign policy objectives, largely through peaceful means. We are therefore grateful that this forum has provided us with an opportunity to look at and appreciate the role played by protocol and diplomacy on regional integration, for which, giving the African example, we have been beneficiaries. And so we wish the participants and the organizers well in this important online conference. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. If Apollo John can hear me, can you come on board and introduce the next speaker, please?
He's on stage, but we can't seem to hear him.
Can you unmute, please? I think he's muted his...
The mute is from his end, so yeah. So we may need to go on and get him back up.
I can hear you.
You can hear, okay.
All right, welcome.
Yeah. So much.
Yes, we can hear you.
Ambassador Lazarus Amaya for that great, beautiful presentation. Our next speaker is Ambassador Manoa Episu. Stands as one of the Kenya's most respected communication leaders and diplomats with an illustrious career that seamlessly bridges journalism, strategic communication, and high-stakes diplomacy. He commands esteem across Africa and beyond. Episu journey began in journalism with roles at Reuters, where he honored his craft covering global economic and political affairs across Africa, and later the Commonwealth Secretariat as Deputy Director of Communication and Public Affairs, strengthening media engagement at the executive level. He then served as the head of the Presidential Strategic Communication Unit at State House, spokesperson in Kenya, becoming the public face of the presidency and a key architect of national messaging. In 2022, he was awarded the High National Honor, Elder of the Order of the Burning Spear, EBS, for his exceptional services to communication and diplomacy, and as scoring his contribution to Kenya's global standing. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Ambassador Manoa Episu. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you for that introduction. We're trying to get him on stage. Just give me a second. While we'll try to get him on stage, I'll just engage our screen.
In a world more interconnected than ever before, the International Center for Protocol and Diplomacy stands as a beacon of leadership, connection, and transformation. We are the leading independent platform working globally, committed to making protocol and diplomatic practices more effective. We empower global visibility, foster connectivity, and inspire influence, all for the advancement of our vital profession. Our commitment is to visibility, integrity, value, and performance. We educate, influence, and transform. Our mission: to build global leaders who make significant differences within the global diplomatic community and diversified industries. With the Sustainable Development Goals 2030 agenda at our core, we facilitate connectivity, provide viable opportunities, and bridge the gaps between individuals, governments, embassies, international organizations, international business communities, and more. We navigate the complex landscapes of diplomacy, trade, economics, foreign policies, and culture. We help organizations understand the strategic engagements of diplomatic empowerment, ensuring a world that is truly connected. International Center for Protocol and Diplomacy, empowering global connectivity and sustainable leadership for a brighter tomorrow. In a world more interconnected than ever before, the International Center for Protocol and Diplomacy stands as a beacon of leadership, connection, and transformation. We are the leading independent platform working globally, committed to making protocol and diplomatic practices more effective. We empower global visibility, foster connectivity, and inspire influence, all for the advancement of our vital profession. Our commitment is to visibility, integrity, value, and performance. We educate, influence, and transform. Our mission: to build global leaders who make significant differences within the global diplomatic community and diversified industries. With the Sustainable Development Goals 2030 agenda at our core, we facilitate connectivity, provide viable opportunities, and bridge the gaps between individuals, governments, embassies, international organizations, international business communities, and more. We navigate the complex landscapes of diplomacy, trade, economics, foreign policies, and culture. We help organizations understand the strategic engagements of diplomatic empowerment, ensuring a world that is truly connected. International Center for Protocol and Diplomacy, empowering global connectivity and sustainable leadership for a brighter tomorrow.
All right, everyone. So while we try to get our next speaker up to keep things moving, we would have other speaker up in the group.
John, can you introduce Gordon, please?
I can go ahead and introduce Gordon, since there might be some technical issues from John's part. So,
Okay. Or I can introduce, yeah.
It's fine. So Gordon Cacciola is a foreign policy and diplomatic relationship expert, legislative strategist, former journalist and media commentator, a dynamic Kenyan foreign policy expert and legislative strategist whose contributions continue to shape and elevate the country's foreign affairs landscape. Recognized as the originator of Kenya's Foreign Service Bill, enacted into law in 2021, laying the foundations for a professionalized and accountable diplomatic service. In 2024, he played a pivotal role in the development of Kenya's revised foreign policy document, aligning it with contemporary global shifts and regional priorities. A consistent advocate for South-South cooperation with a firm belief of stronger Kenya diplomatic policies. Known for principled leadership across legislation, diplomacy, media, and advocacy, standing out as one of Kenya's youngest, most articulate, and forward-looking voices in foreign policy matters. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to Gordon Cacciola. Thank you. Gordon, the floor is yours, please.
So we can hear you, but there might be a lag, maybe because of the internet. Can anyone else confirm?
Inviting me to speak in this particular forum. I also want to thank Mr. John Apollo, who has tremendously worked hard in the space of protocol and diplomacy within the country and outside the country to ensure that at least not just diplomats alone are at par with matters protocol, but the entire population as it engages in various forums. Now, it is either the hardest job or the funniest job to speak after stalwarts like Ambassador Lazarus and Apollo and the international center you've actually fixed. Speaking after stalwarts becomes either the most funny thing. But anyhow, diplomacy and soft power in East and North Africa, strategies for promoting regional cooperation. I don't know if it should be okay if I put the presentation is up. Thank you. The art of soft power diplomacy is often something that many will debate about. And I think in our writings, first year's female Secretary of State Albright did mention in her book, The Mighty and the Almighty. I want to believe she's trying to elaborate how soft power sometimes overpowers the hard power. The aspect of influencing, bringing together, and pulling to your side, clearly, as illustrated in that simple picture there, depicts what soft power can do. Next slide. Next slide, please. Protocol and diplomacy. Now, let us look at protocol and diplomacy as enablers of integration before we go into the rest. Now, as enablers of integration, protocol and diplomacy are mutually constitutive. When compact, transparent, and professionally executed, they enhance credibility, compliance, and problem-solving capacity in regional integration. As we shall see later in this presentation, there's nothing in the world of diplomacy that beats protocol because it isn't the work of diplomats. It makes the work so easy that it becomes a tradition to do particular things. They lower expectations and uncertainty and ease the cooperation. Protocol and diplomacy standardizes expectations. They govern the agenda setting, the presentation, and technical standards. Now, I want us to use an example here of countries, for example, where there are belligerent groups. So Protocol and diplomacy enables the socialization of these belligerent groups into rule-based interaction, despite limited enforcement capacities. And this, near home in Africa, it's something we've seen in South Sudan. It's something we've seen in areas like Ivory Coast, Mali, among many other countries in Africa. Next slide. Now, the East and North question that we are presented with today, we must take cognizance that East and North Africa are geographically intersecting the Arab world and the Indian Ocean world. And when you talk of the Arab world and the Indian Ocean world, you are talking of a trade route. You are talking of historical aspect of the global South. You are talking about the interaction point of two major worlds. The two are facing major security challenges, a factor we may not want to run away from. And these comes from civil wars, terrorism, migration issues, or if you want, you call them refugee issues, while also being bound together by strong cultural, religious, and commercial ties. I call the area around the Horn of Africa region, I call it a laboratory, because at no single moment would it be silent. If it is not civil war, it is terrorism, it is all manner of things happening there. In this context of soft power rooted in culture, values, and legitimate foreign policy, it provides a cost-effective alternative to coercion, enabling governments and regional organizations to influence others through attraction, shared norms, and voluntary cooperations. Next slide. Now, I want us to look at regional architecture and soft power opportunities within the region of East and North Africa. What are some of the protocols that are already established that can help in the integration of these regions? East Africa, for example, its formation has had the dream of becoming a federation, the dream of having a common currency. And some of these issues still pending, still in work in progress. Protocols have been signed that enables these issues to be poured forward in a manner that doesn't lower expectation, doesn't raise expectation, doesn't bring confrontation among nations. So is North Africa. The East African community, for example, integration sequenced through Custom Union of 2005, Common Market of 2010, Monetary Union protocol that was signed in 2013, and long-term political federation. Now, you see the aspect of protocol here and how it is helping the entire region of East African community to forge a neatly woven integration. It might not be a case of today or tomorrow, but it's a work in progress, albeit very slow. Someone once said the European Union picked the model of East Africa and ran away with it. Today, the European Union is far much ahead than the owners of the model they picked. When we talk about the Horn of Africa, we have the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, IGAD. It functions as a convener. It functions as a convener for conflict mediations and cross-border coordinations on matters of drought response, pastoral mobility, and health. It provides a recurring platform for convening power and norm entrepreneurship among member states. So that protocol in itself helped bring countries in the entire IGAD, in the entire Horn of Africa region, majorly not all, but a number of them brought together under the umbrella of IGAD. At the continental level, and that is where now we can jump over to the Maghreb region, Agenda 2063 and the African Continental Free Trade Area is one that, if properly used, if properly taken advantage of, then would see a complete integration of some of our regions, not only north and east, but even west and south. Next slide. Now, as a continuation of that, when we look at one of the countries in the North Africa region, Morocco. Morocco has deployed the religious diplomacy as a tool to ensure that it mobilizes, it brings together the entire North Africa together. And that is seen through the Muhammad, the Sixth Institute for Training of Imams. Morocco educates clerics from Sahel region and the entire West Africa region. So what does that do? It promotes tradition, it promotes religion, and you know where religion, one of the most powerful tools that one would use to rally a call for the entire society, for our people, there's no any other powerful tool than religion. This exports a brand of religious moderation linked to Rabat's border political projects in Africa. And when you go to the history of it, you realize that Egypt operates a global center for Islamic learning. So there's that cooperation in terms of religious ties between Morocco and Egypt. Some of the things that, when taken advantage of, then integration of regions would easily thrive. However, that does not mean there are issues that are underlying some of these beautiful protocols that are already established, that are being established. But those challenges notwithstanding, we get to realize that the already existing protocol and diplomacy in its practice can be such a good tool and enabler forging regional integration. Now, to maintain a vast network of graduates worldwide, Egypt uses Al-Azhar University. It functions as the most common community shaping transnational norms in jurisprudence, interfaith dialogues, and Islamic education. Some of the models today used in Qatar are borrowed from the Al-Azhar University. What does this speak about? The ability to spread, to use diplomacy and to use protocol as an enabler. It's such a powerful tool that when the implementers become strategic enough, then it becomes the biggest platform to integrate societies, to integrate communities into one. Because in integration of communities and societies, you cannot do it when they don't have a common factor, a common unifying factor. So the Northern Africa have one major common factor, which is religion, which is majorly Islam. Unlike East Africa and maybe South and maybe West, that have various religions. Northern have a fundamental uniting factor in religion that protocols established, therefore, are becoming easy enablers, challenges notwithstanding. As I wind up, we move to the next slide as I wind up. Now, what are some of the past practical soft power engagements in East Africa, for example? Now, we have the economic diplomacy and global leadership and the region of peace and multilateral engagement. Now, on matters economic diplomacy and global leadership, since 2013, Kenya has harnessed economic diplomacy to enhance its soft power, extensive international outreach by leaders, hosting major global forums such as Global Entrepreneurship Summit, the WTO Ministerial Conferences, TICAD 4, and these ones have enabled the strengthening of the country's regional influence and global visibility. That helps in galvanizing, not necessarily becoming an hegemony, but galvanizing the support and bringing together other countries to ensure that they foster regional integration. Region cannot be fostered just by having a common platform, by a common agenda, but must also be fostered through someone standing out, a nation standing out to be counted when it matters. Somebody must lead the way in any regional organization, in any regional grouping or bloc. There is always a presumed leader of that bloc. Kenya has taken advantage to be seen as that leader. As to whether it is, that remains a debate. On matters regional peace building and multilateral engagement, Kenya has actively positioned itself as a peace builder, mediating in conflicts from the Democratic Republic of Congo to Uganda, currently playing a key role in Somalia and South Sudan peace processes. The country's strongest credential in UN peacekeeping and membership in the institution like EAC and African Union Peace and Security Council underscore its soft power leadership. When we talk about soft power, we cannot demonstrate it better than between the year 80s, around 86, 87, all the way to 2000 when South Sudan became independent. There is no any better demonstration than that. And that alone is a stepping stone, is a platform for the entire region to rally behind the presumed leader to ensure regional integration. When someone takes a lead in a particular thing, we know, for example, if you go to Tanzania, Tanzania takes pride in its cultural diplomacy. And that is one thing that the region can emulate, can copy, And the established protocols within Tanzania's cultural diplomacy can help the region to coalesce around one another and build a more cohesive, a more integrated region. It is therefore, in my humble submission, that regional integration is largely dependent. The next slide that says, thank you. Regional integration is largely dependent on not just the leaders, but the laid down protocols that go beyond particular leaders. When we have proper leadership, just move to the last slide, or you can just go away with the slides. I'm done. When we have proper laid down protocols, as other esteemed colleagues here mentioned, they go beyond just leaders of the moment. And some of these protocols are what have helped many nations globally, the Americans, for example, borrowing from the European Union. It is important to note that the laid down protocols by European Union have helped the entire region to make better decisions, lower expectations, and also forge a meaningful unity with clarity, to the extent that no any other country feels left behind, be it economically, be it socially, be it culturally and politically. Everyone feels embedded in the same boat moving forward. I thank you all. I want to thank the Center for organizing this wonderful conversation, and also to John Apple for the invitation to speak in this forum. I thank you and I submit.
Thank you very much for that presentation on there. I'm just wondering if John is up. Any questions? There are a few questions that we've received online, and I was just wondering if some of our speakers would like to answer these questions for us. For instance, Paul Johan says, how can African countries benefit effectively from technology transfers through the economic diplomacy? This is, I'd like to open it up there for the speakers to answer, if you let me know, okay? And then Donatus also says, between economic and political diplomacy, which one determines the regional integration growth and influence? I'll say that again. It says, between economic and political diplomacy, which one determines the regional and integration growth and influence? Like to, and then Haggy Branham says, kindly explain more on how climate poses as a challenge in economic diplomacy. So I'll post this to our speakers, and whoever would like to go on first, I'd like them to answer that. And once we finished with this, we get our next speaker, Natasha, and will be introduced by Agnes. So the first question, again, is how can African countries benefit effectively from technology transfers through economic diplomacy? I can't seem to see the names of the speakers. I would have.
Well, can I go first?
Yes, please. Yes, please. That's, yeah.
No, just let the first question stay there. The question by Paul Johanna: how can African countries benefit effectively from technology transfers through economic diplomacy? One, it is important to note that where we are today, we cannot talk purely economic diplomacy without the technological aspect of the world we live in. We live in a world that has moved from the traditional economic diplomacy into a digital infrastructured economic diplomacy. Today in China, for example, you will realize that nearly 30% of their GDP, if not 20-something, is generated from the digital infrastructure. It clearly shows digital and technology infrastructure. It clearly shows that the world is moving very fast towards digital and technological economic diplomacy engagement. Therefore, how can African countries benefit here? Just on the ongoing summit in Japan from yesterday, it is emerging that African countries are still not trading amongst themselves. It is a reality that trade, intra-Africa trade, stands nearly at 15%. When we talk of technological transfer, we must begin to understand that technology doesn't necessarily need to be all imported. Technology must also be something that is inbuilt. One thing that we can take pride in as Africans, what are we building technologically as African countries? Where are we standing technologically as African nations? The extent where we can say we want to use this particular technology to drive our economy. So at any point of diplomatic engagement, economic diplomatic engagement with the rest of the world, on the table is our invented technological knowledge. And when we have to borrow from outside, then it must not be copy and paste technology. How does that technology then relate to the African context and in its use? This is quite wide, but I want to believe that in the transfer of technology, African countries must begin to realign themselves in a manner that the technology that they use is economically viable for them and economically aligned, that whenever they are talking diplomacy, economic diplomacy, that technology is infused. On to the second question, where
the
maybe
second,
you just put the second
yeah, can you put the second question up?
Economic and political diplomacy.
The second question is, between economic and political diplomacy, which one determines the regional integration, growth, and influence? Do you want to go for that one as well?
Saying between food and water. Yes. Between food and water, which one makes us survive? We cannot just survive on water alone. We must have food. We cannot survive on food alone. We must have water. Either way, both plays a key role in determining regional integration. However, we must take cognizance of the fact that economic diplomacy plays such a huge role, because no country will want to get into an integration where they feel dwarfed economically, or where they feel their economic power is going to be dwarfed or to sublime in the economy of other nations. So both are important, but depending on the region and factors at play, I do submit that economic diplomacy can be very vital, political equally but vital, but it depends with the leadership of the day at the top. That determines everything. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Would you attempt to answer the third question, or should I throw it up there for our next, some of our speakers to answer? Kindly explain more on how climate poses as a challenge in economic diplomacy.
Well, climate, it's interesting here, because today when you talk about climate, there are other quarters in the world that will not want to hear the term climate. But Branham is asking how climate passes as a challenge in economic diplomacy. Today, there is nothing we can do in the world or in any economy that climate aspect is not tied to it. If you are to build infrastructure, you must build an infrastructure that is climate smart. If you are to do any budget for any country, your budget must factor in a climate, must be climate smart, must be climate resilient. In everything that we do, we have to consider the climate aspect. So how does it pass such challenge? When we talk about, when the global north, for example, talks about climate mitigation, what does that mean to the global south, that is the least emitter of the greenhouse gas and the biggest sufferer of the greenhouse gas? It simply means, as we emit, kindly learn to live with it. And what does that do to our economy as the global south? What does it do to the economic diplomacy? You all remember when COP began somewhere in Brazil, 1993, some of the outlined issues to date have not been met. When the global south speaks about challenges they face as growing economy within COP, in many times it is either a promise after another to mitigate the challenges that they face, but eventually which do not come to pass. So they have to eventually plan with the money that they don't have to mitigate challenges that they did not bring to themselves. So we cannot speak economic diplomacy today without factoring in climate aspect. And climate mitigation is not cheap, it is expensive. As we require every ministry or every department to have, every ministry to have a climate department, it calls for financial input. that financial input may not be there for many global South countries. So it is becoming a huge challenge in a way that many countries did not imagine, but it is here with them. They have to outsource. They have to either borrow funds to come and mitigate challenges that they have. They have to go for loans, be it soft loans, be it whatever kind of loan from the international bodies or bilaterally to ensure that they mitigate the challenges. So yes, it is a challenge that becomes open every day, and everyone involved in the economic diplomacy engagement must begin to appreciate that unless the global north appreciates the effects of the greenhouse they emit to the world that happens to the global south, this economic diplomacy may not just pass as an economic diplomacy.
Oh dear. Agnes, can you come in, please? Yeah.
Yes, sure. Thank you very much, Anne, for handing over. And I am very excited to introduce our next speaker, who is going to speak on cultural intelligence in diplomacy, understanding cultural nuances in East and North Africa. I would like to present to you Natasha Hadija Sebunya, who is a facilitator at the Center for Policy and Strategic Studies at the University of Melbourne, Australia, also with close ties in Uganda and Egypt. She holds a public policy master's at the University of Melbourne, at the Faculty of Foreign Executive Program Center of Policy and Strategic Studies, CPSS for short. Natasha is a public policy enthusiast, invested in dispassionate discussions about policy with young people across the world, keen on transforming our world for the people that might come after. A collegiate debate champion, spoken word poet, and creative writer, Natasha can talk about anything with anyone, being a true today's diplomat. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm handing over to Natasha Hadija. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. Just one small correction. I'm a faculty at the Pioneering Center for Policy and Strategic Studies. They're set up in Uganda because of the courtesy of the United States by way of the American Center and the University of Delaware. In Melbourne, I only did a master's there, and my attachment to Egypt is through research. So I'm here today, very happy to be here to give you cultural intelligence and diplomacy, understanding the cultural nuances in East and North Africa. Cultural diplomacy may be defined as the deliberate and strategic exchange of ideas, values, traditions, and other cultural elements with the aim of fostering mutual understanding, strengthening relationships, advancing social cultural cooperation, and promoting national or international interests. It may be conducted by government bodies, private entities, cultural societies like GZK, which is the Gottes Zentrum, British Council, and Alliance Française, religious or ideological institutions or civil society organizations, each contributing to the broader objective of building trust and dialogue across cultural divides. Sometimes when these institutions are set up in your country, normal people may not know that they have a foreign policy attachment and it's just a soft power thing. Other times they are open about it and about the cultural cultural exchange. In Uganda, for example, we have GZK, AFK, and the Confucius Institute of China, and the American Center, which is more about education, and with the revamp from Trump, more about entrepreneurship. So cultural intelligence or cultural quotient, CQ, is the ability to relate to others and to interact effectively across cultures. I'm really sorry, that's just the chickens in my backyard crowing. I can't do anything about it, but I hope I'm still audible. Yeah. Sorry. The measure of effectiveness of someone's CQ is determined by the interests of said nation or institution. So sometimes a nation can be looking for mutual understanding. Sometimes it can be looking to assert dominance. One way to see the intention of a nation or what it works with, for example, can be in something like how Gottes Zentrum Kampala operates in Uganda versus Alliance Française Kampala. So GZK in Kampala is fond of working with is fond of giving free events. So when you go into GZK, its main concern is accessibility, getting everyone involved. And the reason for that is because German's foreign policy is really more about assimilation into a society. While for Alliance Française is a profit-based entity, and they focus on getting profits for the artists, and that's because France's foreign policy within Uganda has a more domineering role, and they seek to interact with the elite. It's neither a good or a bad thing. I just put that there to show the nuance and to show that you take a different cultural approach, or you use your cultural intelligence differently to achieve different placement within societies. Loosely and usually in the rural or less exposed parts of East Africa, I just wanted to talk about some things that you would need to know, or someone would tell you if you were going to work within East Africa. I think that when you're working within the main city, like let's say you're working in Kigali, or you're working in Nairobi, or you're working in Kampala, you don't really need to rely on these kind of things. But when you're going out to meet somebody of a higher office, for example, say in the government, or if you're going to meet somebody within the rural areas, these are some of the cultural nuances that you need to understand so that you don't be perceived as rude or misunderstood. In East Africa, it's quite common for people to handhold and to greet your hand for a very, very long time. In fact, it can even be uncomfortable, but they consider that kind of exchange more human. In fact, quite like famously, one of the big problems that people who are trying to promote hand and sanitization they face when they go to places like Kisoro is that you can't get people to not touch or to hold hands, and it's perceived as rude when somebody doesn't do that. Another thing is that people as a commonality might flirt and flatter you, especially men to women. And a lot of times some people perceive this to be sexual advances, or they seem to read too much into it and say that it's sexual harassment, or somebody is trying to make a move on you. But if you're a cultural diplomat, you need to understand that it's meaningless. It's just something that people do to make you feel welcome, to make you feel warm, and usually there's nothing towards it. Now, if you're looking for mutual understanding and cultural cooperation, your cultural quotient should inform you that you shouldn't read too much into it. But there's some institutions, like say, for example, if UN Women comes into Uganda and they want to advance a sort of feminist politic, if they are in a position of hierarchy, they can talk to the people within that company. They can talk to their employees if they have a higher standing, and they can encourage new cultures. Like I remember I once worked in an office where the lady was very deliberate about making sure women weren't asked to serve tea, that they weren't asked to talk before men. And that's because she was trying to influence a cultural understanding that came from somewhere else. So her cultural diplomacy in that end wasn't really seeking for mutual understanding. It was seeking to influence and implement a global foreign politic that has decided to help to bring equity between people. Another thing you need to know about East Africa is that most negotiations won't happen on the table, but they'll happen informally at bars and at dinners. And there's always a lot of nuance to understand that pay is expected. For example, if you're a diplomat, or if you're somebody who comes from a global company and you're perceived to be of a higher stature, when you invite people to go out and they make the time, you are expected to pay. Now, this is when you need to really understand the difference between the rural and urban parts of East Africa. In the rural parts of places where people don't have that much exposure, this would be expected. But if you do this, for example, with the upper class, they might be offended, and they might read that into as being racism. Then also, when you go into an office, or like you go into the rural areas, there's a lot of paternalism. The head of the office usually is a man. They usually have more respect for the elderly and for women. And if depending on what you're there for, if you're there to influence cultural understandings, like some organizations are, it's good to mix it up. But if you're there to make a deal, then it's good to front, say, the man in the room or an elderly woman, so that so that you can get some sort of respect and you can get whatever you need done quickly. However, if you're there for a different reason, it's always good to influence culture and to shape your understanding of the world, and many people do that. So on informal negotiations, one of the things that can really show the difference between cooperation and influencing is for a long time, the EU was giving support for people for elections, and they would go into Karamoja. And because of how Uganda works, many of the people who are coming to those kind of things knew that they had to pay people in order to mobilize other people. So a few years ago, the EU decided to do something completely different, and they said that we're going to influence people's political participation, but we're going to make sure that these people are not given per diem. And even if we have one person in the room, we shall work to have more. We shall work to have more and more people slowly and deliberately, so that we have a clear assessment of who's here because they're politically inclined or who's here for the money. So that's cultural understanding. So it doesn't mean that you have to bend towards other people's will, but depending, you have to be strategic and see how that aligns with your goal. Same with Egypt, because and also when you go into a government office, casual dressing is official dressing is encouraged for women, skirts below the knees, not too tight, things like that. And and when you're meeting somebody who's superior, you're encouraged to be on time. However, when people are not on time to meet you, you shouldn't think of it as immediate. You shouldn't immediately think of it as offense or disrespect, but actually to just understand that within Africa, or because of where people live or how far they come from work, something like even rain can make somebody not be there on time. So it's not about their character. Actually, I know many friends of mine who actually who are diplomats or people who have come from abroad, and what they usually do to keep up with Kampala time is they pick up a book and they read, anticipating the person will be late, and then learning how to not take offense. So now I'll talk a little bit about Egypt, which is very, very similar to East Africa, I think. Especially Uganda, given the Islamic base, and also Africa can sometimes be the same. The greeting is the same. Beware, know that there'll be hand holding. It might be for an uncomfortable while. It might even be for the same sex. It doesn't mean too much. And in Egypt, they like to kiss on both cheeks as well. Flirting and flattery is meaningless, should not be misconstrued into a sexual advance. And of course, you can advance your feminist politics, same as you can do in Uganda. Informal negotiations rely on contextual nuance. One thing I think people who work in Egypt are very aware of is that you should never give negative feedback publicly, and you should always tiptoe around people and save someone's face, and if you're going to criticize, let's say, somebody that you feel to be of a high stature, to have some sort of reputation within people, it's better to pull them aside than to discipline them in front of people who might be their subordinates or younger than them, and that would be much appreciated. Same with East Africa. There's a lot of paternalism, ageism, and time blindness, and also sexism. Women will always, be on the back, will always be a bit subordinate to East Africa. Just one, because I think while East Africa is broad and there are very many similarities, I think Rwanda, for example, when it comes to women and their placement in politics, I think Rwanda does not have the same representation politic that, say, a country like Kenya or Uganda would have in the rural areas, because they have a deliberate country policy that makes sure that women are represented. Within the country's framework, I know in Kenya, there's a lot of, because Kenya is considered to be a global hub. If you're within Nairobi, pretty much the same ethical practices that you see happening in the West, and things like, you don't talk to your coworker this way. These HR policies, they're very firm and they're very deployed within Kenya. And because Kenya, it really prides itself on being a place where expatriates can come and work with ease. So, yeah. And then lastly, have a personality. Over time, authenticity prevails over cultural quotient. Cultural quotient is important to avoid cultural gaffes and almost necessary for official and initial interactions, especially people that are not once subordinate. Like when you're meeting somebody for the first time, when you're meeting the president and there's a lot of TV and it's usually your first time, you really have to know this cultural diplomacy, because things can be unforgivable and you can do something so dramatic. I think like in Uganda, I think we had somebody who became a diplomat. She was Madvani's daughter, and she was placed in Dubai. And then she had to speak to Ugandans Ugandans were reading in the news all these things about what the domestic workers within the country were going through. And so what she did, because I think she really wasn't used to speaking to people, was she just told them, well, come to Dubai and check for yourself if this is happening, and of course, if you're used to people of higher echelons of society, that kind of sarcasm would have been like well received, but towards other Ugandans, she came off as cold, insensitive, and that was something that really affected her reputation. However, given time, people had gotten used to her character, gotten used to her, they would have easily forgiven that, but because of that one fatal mistake, it's kind of frozen into the imagination of people about what her character is. However, over time, if the goal is genuine, diplomats should feel free to relax into their humanness, because humanity is often quite recognizable across the world and mistakes are easily forgiven and forgotten. People, whenever you're within a workplace and you're working with somebody who is foreign, they're going to make so many mistakes, but over time, if they're open and they're welcome or if they make an open environment, Ugandans are very flexible, they're very adaptable, they're very understanding of who somebody is, and I think especially in the cities, people are very much exposed, even if they've not been abroad, with media and all these sorts of things. They're getting better and better with cultural quotient. So I would advise that everybody just is themselves, except for the absolute big things. And for the higher ups and for one-time opportunities. So thank you so much for listening to me. That is the end of my presentation.
Thank you so much for that awesome presentation there. There's a lot to take in, and about cultural intelligence and the intelligence quotient and all that. But I also wanted to find out, when you meet people for the first time and you are not really sure about what to do, are you allowed to ask, especially in some cultures, they're allowed to hug. Other cultures, they're allowed to shake hands. And others are allowed to kiss the cheek. So if you're not sure, can you ask first, or you just go ahead and do what you think that culture does?
So I think if you're meeting somebody who's of a higher stature, especially in East Africa and or abroad, I feel like you can ask your staff beforehand, especially if you're new to the area, or you can watch what has been the occurrence in other countries. I know for President Museveni in Uganda, especially as he's gotten older, he really does not let people touch him because of his health. He even wears the COVID mask, but you get security briefings before you meet these people. I feel like similar with Cairo and everything. Similar with Cairo, I think you ask, but you don't ask the person you're greeting. You get a briefing before, and usually the people who drive you around, maybe the driver, or you can watch previous meetings because of social media these days and find out exactly the kind of person that you're dealing with. It's always important that it's also almost always pertinent that you research. I think the biggest cultural gap maybe you can make. I can think of Rwanda being sensitive, but its sensitivity is around maybe tribalizing people. That's the mistake that you can make. But I don't think there's anything that would be too embarrassing or unforgivable to be done within East and Northern Africa.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. Are there any questions? Agnes, did you see any questions on that? I can't seem to see any questions on the comment section on the live.
Not at the moment, apart from the ones that
I hear some. I see some people. Great presentation, Natasha. There's a lot to learn and study under cultural intelligence in diplomacy. That's from Hagi Braham. And then Corey Paul says, amazing presentation. Oh, there's another question here for you, Natasha. It says, please, can you explain more on ways in which cultural intelligence can be used to trigger economic development within the African regions? For example, East versus West African, North versus South African, etc. Yeah.
Okay, I think cultural intelligence within East Africa, I think a big mistake that I think America made in East Africa was or that the people who worked with America would complain about was their insistence to lecture. And you know, like they felt condescended to every time America would spend too many times in workshops teaching people about human rights violations and focusing on everything that was wrong with the continent, as opposed to helping people. And China was different. China talked less, and China promised infrastructure deals. Granted, there's so many problems when it comes to, you know, the debt. How can the country pay it off? Is the money being used properly? But their focus was, we are going to, they deliberately have a diplomacy strategy of talking less and having more action. So that was the big difference. And I think to compete with China, what America has had to do within the at least Uganda is to talk a little bit less, and has shifted from aid and into entrepreneurship and actually, you know, having results. So I think maybe that cultural shift triggered them. So competition was something that triggered them. And also, you know, social media, we have these people on social media who strategically talk about these things. I feel like they're you know, who will speak aloud about something that's going wrong. Like, I know right now we have like the Chan tournament that's being hosted in Uganda, and one of the big complaints that Ugandans have made on social media to push the government to do something better for the players, they've been talking deliberately about the place where the players are staying. So, you know, you just kind of find a megaphone and you kind of find willing ears and you kind of push that kind of understanding. And yeah, knowing Uganda and knowing the sensitivity of some of these leaders, and that they deeply care, and sometimes it's a lack of knowledge, you can use that cultural quotient to know that if they see something online, they might pick it up and put it forward. I think that goes for South Africa too, because we when you go to social media, you can see that like people can interact with their government officials. They can find a platform. I think less of North Africa, because North African leaders are sensitive to criticism, like what people were saying. So I think when you want to trigger economic development, it's usually finding somebody that's politically willing, and like, because it's largely a patriarchal society, maybe looking for, you know, somebody who's a man. They have a lot of respect for Muslims, for example. So have and people, as usual, with everyone with class, somebody who's already successful, and maybe you can have that as your speaker and political will. So yeah, that's the advice I would give.
Excellent. There's another question for you. In what ways does cultural intelligence influence negotiation outcomes and conflict resolution?
It's, I think, immensely. If you look at the peace agreements that happened within East Africa for a very long time, we've had our president who has steered them, and the reason that he steered them is simply because of age and longevity in power. So having Museveni there kind of gets people to respect him more. I think one time during I think there was a conflict, I think it was with Salva Kiir. He has something that he does that's very interesting. He does cow diplomacy, because you know, within Africa, people are like, there's a grouping of people that has an attachment to cows, longhorned cattle. So I think to make a negotiation with Cyril Ramaphosa, I think there was an official wedding with somebody in power within the National Resistance Movement, which is our political power, where they exchanged cows. The Ankole longhorned cattle were taken into South Africa, that was culture diplomacy, culture negotiations, helped their relationships. And yeah, and also with, I think, Salva Kiir, it's just that age grouping, your stature as somebody that's been in power for a very long time, your age, for example, can influence who you can talk to. Yeah, so I think it is everything in negotiation outcomes and conflict resolution. I mean, as far as those things can go, because we also know that they can be stalled, and sometimes war just needs to end in defeat. Yeah. But yeah,
excellent.
I think it was a long
excellent.
way.
Excellent. Cow diplomacy, that's wonderful. This is the first time I'm hearing that, and I'll make a note of that. We've done most of the questions that we have. I think Agnes will introduce our next speaker. And Okori Paul says, amazing presentation there. That's wonderful, and it's excellent there. Yeah. I'd like to introduce Agnes to introduce our next speaker, please.
Thank you very much. Before we move on, there is one last question I have seen. Not sure if it has been answered already partially. Please, can you explain in more ways in which cultural intelligence can be used to trigger economic development within Africa regions, for example, East versus West African, North versus South African? It can go to Natasha or anyone else that would like to address this very important and very interesting question.
I think she answered that partially, but the comparison was with maybe America, and maybe somebody can take the angle where East versus West Africa, North versus South Africa. Maybe another speaker can take that angle, please.
Well, all right then. I think yes, I think we can move ahead, and potentially it can be something to continue think about. Also, I would like to encourage the participants to reach out to the presenters, to reach out to the moderators, to the organizers as well on LinkedIn or other forms of communication, so that you can strengthen your networks as well. And as far as I'm concerned, there are no more presenters available at this point. IT support team, can you please confirm if we can go ahead with the closure?
I think we're able to bring one more person.
Ambassador is on, isn't it? Ambassador Isipisu is on.
Yes.
Have you called? Is it there? Here?
I think he may be disconnected again.
Just check, because we really need to have his presentation if possible.
Yeah, he's been disconnected again, so we will prompt him to get back again. Yeah, we just need to prompt. He was here just a moment ago.
Okay. So in the meantime, I may start reading the bio, and potentially he will be on, if that's all right, Patricia.
Yes, please. I think you should. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. So the topic of Ambassador Manoa Esipisu is harnessing soft power for regional influence, the role of diplomacy in East and North Africa. He is standing out as Kenya's most respected communication leaders and diplomats, with an illustrious career that seamlessly Esipisu's journey began in journalism and wrote.
Agnes, let me just cut you there. I think he said the microphone is still not working, so he will share his notes so we can close up.
Okay, so I can close up this. Okay, thank you very much.
His microphone is still not working. So sorry, Ambassador. I think he can hear us, but unfortunately, we can't hear him. So, we're sorry about that, and hopefully next time we'll have you on. Sorry about that. Yeah, so you could close up. Yes.
Thank you very much, Patricia, for giving me the floors. So with this, I would like to address the distinguished speakers, guests, and colleagues and friends. As we conclude this enriching conference, we reflect on the vital themes that have shaped our dialogue, from the transformative power of economic diplomacy in driving development and regional integration across North and East Africa, to the indispensable role of protocol and diplomacy in fostering trust and cohesion. Our discussions have underscored diplomacy's multifaceted impact. We explored how soft power strategies rooted in cultural, education, and shared values can promote regional cooperation and elevate Africa's global standing. The analysis of regional trade agreements and climate mitigation strategies revealed how both opportunities and challenges are shaping the dialogues, emphasizing the need for harmonized policies and inclusive frameworks to unlock sustainable growth. Equally compelling was our focus on cultural intelligence, a cornerstone of effective diplomacy. Understanding the rich tapestry of cultural nuances in East and North Africa is not merely an academic exercise, it's also a strategic imperative for building bridges and resolving conflicts. Let us leave here not only informed but also inspired to champion diplomacy as that is empathetic, strategic, and inclusive. May the insights shared today guide our efforts towards a more integrated, prosperous, and culturally attuned Africa. On behalf of the International Center for Protocol and Diplomacy, ICPD, we thank you for your engagement and participation in the East-North Africa Protocol and Diplomatic Leadership online conference, and may our collaboration continue beyond these walls. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, and just to say that we'll circulate his message. He just sent it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Krishna, the floor is yours.
I'd like John to round up since he's from the East. Yes, John, if you can round up.
Oh, thank you so much. I'll give a brief, then finally, it's a responsibility to round it up for all of us. I want to appreciate everyone. It's very unique that we come together as great minds to discuss matters of protocol, diplomacy, and people are so much engaged out of our own volition. It is very unique. Some of this program will be getting funds from the government and all that. People have glued here since we began out of this moment with one purpose: how do we harness our regional integration? And therefore, I appreciate the ICPD for organizing this. We have been working together to ensure that we put this together. To the participants who have been with us, this is very great. And moving forward, we are going to have very many of these forums so that we can discuss these matters of protocol and diplomacy. Our region as East Africa and North Africa, as per for today's topic, is still lagging behind on matters of protocol, diplomacy, and etiquette. And this is the only way that we can help our continent moving forward on matters of diplomacy and protocol. And therefore, I appreciate everyone. Let's look forward for much better forums that we're going to have ahead. Thank you so much. Back to you, Anne.
Patricia, if you could just round up, yeah.
No, so this is fine. Thanks to everyone who's been here today. It's fabulous. You hear more from us, and kudos to East North Africa. A lot of potential, a lot of opportunities over there, and we're just amazed and really amazed about the way the responses we've got. So thank you so much, and we'll see you again.
Thank you. Thank you all. Bye. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
In a world more interconnected than ever before, the International Center for Protocol and Diplomacy stands as a beacon of leadership, connection, and transformation. We are the leading independent platform working globally, committed to making protocol and diplomatic practices more effective. We empower global visibility, foster connectivity, and inspire influence, all for the advancement of our vital profession. Our commitment is to visibility, integrity, value, and performance. We educate, influence, and transform. Our mission: to build global leaders who make significant differences within the global diplomatic community and diversified industries. With the Sustainable Development Goals 2030 agenda at our core, we facilitate connectivity, provide viable opportunities, and bridge the gaps between individuals, governments, embassies, international organizations, international business communities, and more. We navigate the complex landscapes of diplomacy, trade, economics, foreign policies, and culture. We help organizations understand the strategic engagements of diplomatic empowerment, ensuring a world that is truly connected. International Center for Protocol and Diplomacy, empowering global connectivity and sustainable leadership for a brighter tomorrow.